Hi, everybody. Happy Sunday. I hope you're all having a great end of your weekend. Hopefully, everybody is getting set up for a good week. I am Gina. Welcome back. I am with Advantage College Planning, and I'm really excited to chat with you tonight about prepping for junior year and really making the most of junior year for those juniors. So, we are in early October, so hopefully, your juniors have gotten a little bit of the jitters out from that beginning of junior year. They're getting settled into their classes. They've kind of gotten settled into their routines over the last month. And so I thought now would be a good time to talk about different things that they can do to really make the most of their time throughout this next year, right? As juniors. So it's really important. It's a really important year for them. So I'm excited to talk about that. So that's what we'll be getting into today, the big three key strategies for thinking about grades, extracurricular activities, and those teacher relationships, which are super important. I see some people have found the chat. That is awesome. Christy and the Murphys. Awesome. Thanks so much, guys. Great. So we've got some juniors already in the house, which is wonderful. Definitely use that chat feature to put in, let me know where you're tuning in from, let me know what year your students are. And then also, as I'm going through and talking, if any questions come up that you're wondering about, go ahead and use that chat feature to post those questions as well. I will have time at the end for Q&A. So we'll be able to get into that. So I'm glad to see the chat is working. Awesome. So junior year. I like to talk a lot about junior year because really this is the year that's leading up to the big application timeline. So with Advantage College Planning, we really start working with our students on their college applications as early as May of junior year. So we don't wait until senior year to get that ball rolling with those applications. So junior year, the beginning of the year is really the time to start solidifying all of those little pieces, really help students make sure that they're in a good place so that when it comes time to start putting together those applications at the end of junior year, they're going to be solid. So let's talk about what I call the big three, and why we really should be focusing on those. So again, the big three for junior year are thinking about academics, so academic growth. Extracurricular engagement is number 2. And number 3 is focusing on building relationships with teachers. And I like to make us focus on those 3 and refer to them as the big 3 and keep the focus there because I've been doing this for a long time. I've been working with adolescents for over 20 years. And so, every grade from 6th all the way through 12th has their highlights and moments of challenge. When I look at my juniors, I really see that junior year can be exciting, but junior year can also feel really overwhelming a lot of times to students, right? So think about it. For most of your students, this is probably the year that they're taking the most challenging courses they've ever taken. Usually this is when we see if students are taking, for example, AP or advanced placement classes, this is the year they're taking more than they've ever taken typically. So the academic workload has really increased. College pressure is ramping up. Now more and more very well-meaning adults are starting to ask your child, where are you going to college? What are you going to major in? Have you thought about this college? Have you done any tours yet? Have you taken your SAT or your ACT? What are your scores? Right? So all of those questions are starting to come at them from people in their lives and from their peer group, right? It's all starting. And there's this impression that by junior year, you kind of need to have it all figured out and you need to know what you're doing. And that can feel really overwhelming, understandably, right? So by focusing on these 3 areas, academics, extracurriculars, and teacher relationships, we're really giving students a concrete plan of 3 specific areas to focus on and to set goals around. So when everything else feels kind of fuzzy and challenging, we can ground ourselves and say, as long as we're focusing on these 3 things, you are going to have a plan. You're going to be in a good shape, right now in terms of what your life looks like academically and extracurricularly, but you're also going to be laying out those building blocks for what you'll need to have a successful college application and smooth college application process in a couple of months. So let's kick it off with academic growth. I really like to start with this one because, again, Academically, for most students, this is going to be one of the most academically challenging year they've had so far. Now, I sometimes do have students who use junior year almost as a reset year. I've had a few students over the years who have gone a little too hard, too fast with those AP classes and hit a wall sophomore year and needed to really do a reset junior year. Either way, this information still applies. Okay. So when we're thinking about these classes, students usually are setting goals around, okay, I want to get these specific grades. I want all A's or I want A's and B's. And that's great, right? We want students to be striving for these high grades. And we'll talk about those in a minute. But what I'm more focused on is, what do you need to do in order to get those grades? So let's think about the study habits, the in-class behavior and routines and habits, the homework habits that you need to start building, or maybe you started building them at the end of sophomore year, but now we've got to really solidify those. What do you need to do to earn an A or a B or whatever your goal is in history versus in math? That might be very different. It might be a very different skill set. And so what I've found is with a lot of students, for the first time, they're really hitting this wall in junior year where just paying attention in class and getting the homework done for a completion grade isn't enough to give them an A, especially for really high achieving, students who've found school to be pretty easy. Eventually they hit that wall and they start to feel kind of bad about themselves. And I tell them, I'm actually glad you're hitting this wall right now, because you were going to hit this wall eventually. Everybody does. And some students don't hit this wall until they're on their own on a college campus somewhere and having all sorts of imposter syndrome, right? So I'm glad that you're hitting this wall now. You're still at home. You're still with your entire support system with you. And so now let's figure it out. Let's come up with some strategies. Let's see what's working well and let's see what's not, and figure that out. But so this academic growth, not just the grades, but thinking about those habits, that's what's really important to focus on when your student's saying they want to get a certain grade. Figure out how they're going to get there. Now, the grades are important. I said I was coming back to them, and I am. So the grades are really important. We know that when colleges are reviewing your student's application, the main thing that they're going to look at first will be the level of rigor of the classes that your student took. What was their curriculum? How rigorous was it? What grades did they earn? And what are their trends? So as the rigor was going up, were their grades going up or staying, kind of similar? Or as the rigor went up, did their grades go down? What is the picture there? So we know colleges will be looking at that. And when the students are applying to college, they're applying in usually about November of their senior year. So what that means is the colleges are going to be seeing the final grades from 9th, 10th, and 11th grade. They will see the classes that your student is taking senior year on their transcript, but they probably won't have any official grades to consider from 12th grade if your student is applying in November, right? There might be quarter grades, but those aren't semester grades. And so schools typically won't update their transcript to put those grades on and send them out to a college. So we really want to end on a high note, right? We want to show that each year I've challenged myself, and each year my grades have gone up or stayed steady. And that's the message we want to tell colleges. Or in the case of my students who maybe sophomore year, they went too hard, too fast, and they needed to do a reset. The message is, hey, I made a mistake and I self-corrected, and then I did really well junior year. I figured it out. But we want the grades to reflect that. And what those grades are reflecting is not only that the student has the academic exposure and ability to be successful at this university they're applying to, but again, they also have those study skills. They have those soft skills that are going to help them to be successful in collegiate level classes. So that's why you definitely want to start with the academics. So then the second piece I focus on with all of my students is their extracurricular engagement. So after colleges have reviewed the grades and maybe test scores, if test scores are included, right, that quantitative data, the next thing they're looking at, from what we've found, is they're looking at character. So these next two things we're going to get into, extracurriculars and teacher relationships, it's all about the character. Colleges are looking for students who, yes, are academically prepared to hit that rigor of that school and graduate on time. But after rigor and after, the coursework, we're really seeing that colleges are looking for what kind of student is this person and how do they contribute to the community around them? How do they engage? How do they present in a classroom? What kind of roommate will they be? What kind of classmate will they be? Right? How are they going to contribute to this dynamic community? And actually, more and more colleges we're seeing are starting to ask questions explicitly about that point. Name one of your personal identity traits and tell us a story about how you positively impacted a community by using that trait. Right? What do you know of our institution? Why do you think you're a good fit for us? And how will you contribute to our dynamic community? Those are two very real supplemental essay prompts that I am working with students on this year. Right? And so the way that students can show that character through those essays, but also the examples they're going to be pulling from, it's going to be from this extracurricular engagement. So usually junior year, we get to a point where students start saying, I've been doing this for years, but I don't really love it. But do you think it would look good on my application if I X? Or will it look good on my application if I start this new activity? I get that question all the time. We're asking the wrong question. We should be asking two questions when you're thinking about an activity. And if your student is trying to decide if they should engage in the activity, we want it to fit one of two things, right? We either want that activity to show fit to major. So does this activity show that I have experience in an area related to my major? Does this activity show that I'm taking initiative to learn more about my major, right? If a student knows that they want to major in a specific field, does this activity that they're doing show fit to major? Choice number one. Or number two, does this activity allow me to demonstrate or continue to build aspects of my character? Those are the two key things I'm looking for in activities, right? And so character isn't just leadership. A lot of times people think, oh, well, leadership, that's the key thing we need. No, this isn't the 90s and 80s and 90s anymore, guys. Like when we applied, we needed to highlight our leadership. Now the door has been busted open and your students can do a wide range of different aspects of character, right? It could be things like empathy, but it can be things like resilience, but it could also be intellectual curiosity and academic or intellectual promise, or just kind of, a worldliness and a global mindedness. There's so many different aspects of character, right? And so when we're thinking about these activities that students are doing, that's really when we get back to their why. So when we're looking at extracurricular engagement for junior year, I sit down with all of my students and I look at their resumes that we've built together. And we say, okay, here are the activities that you've been engaged in, throughout high school. Here's the picture that's being told. Here's the story that's being told about who you are. Does that fit how you want to present yourself to colleges? If not, what's missing, right? How can we take one or two of these activities that are meaningful to you and make your impact bigger? How can we create more meaning for you or for others based on what you're already doing? Or on the other side, especially thinking about fit to major, if your student is planning on applying to a very specific major and they know what they want and they're applying to schools that require students to apply direct admit into that major, having fit to major will be important. So if you have a student who wants to go into business, for example, but they have never gotten involved in any of the school level business activities like DECA or FBLA. They've never had done any job shadowing. They've never done any camps. They've never done any activities at all. They've never even taken any of the elective courses related to business at their high school. We're missing some fit to major, right? So I use junior year as a time to either go deeper or fill the holes. So if you're looking at that resume and if you're saying, wow, this big part of who you are as a person isn't being reflected in these activities, that's a hole. Let's figure out how we can fill that, right? Or if we don't have any fit to major, let's figure out how we can fill that over the course of this next school year and then the summer in between junior and senior year, because you still have time, but the time is ticking. So we need to be aware of that. The third and final piece of the big three is the building of teacher relationships. So two reasons for this. One is when students go to college, we know that students will have the most successful experience if they find mentors, if they have faculty that they connect with who are looking out for them and answering their questions and providing them guidance, right? But if a student never gets used to building that type of rapport with an instructor, then when they go from high school, which is the kind of their safe space, to the scary, intimidating world of college and college professors, they're not going to make that leap, right? If your student is afraid to volunteer and raise their hand in English class at the high school that they've been at since they were a freshman, they're not magically going to roll up on their college campus and start knocking on professors' doors during office hours. It's not happening. And that's a huge opportunity that they'll be missing out on in college. So the first part we need to do is we need to give them the skills and teach them how to engage with their teachers, both in the classroom and going to Smart Lunch, but not just to get a quick question, but go to Smart Lunch to discuss a lesson, go to Smart Lunch to get feedback or whatever it's called at your school, Smart Lunch, office hours, after school, whatever the opportunities are, but go to get feedback on a paper before you turn it in. Right? Get feedback on your draft. Or if there was a really cool lesson they thought was interesting, go and talk to the teacher about it and say, oh, I thought that was really cool what we learned today about such and such. Are there any other resources that you could suggest that I could learn about that? And I know that's a big ask. Most 16-year-olds are not going to do that. I understand that. But just getting them to understand that this is an option, this is something you can be doing, and encouraging them to take those steps, that's increasing the chance that they're going to demonstrate those behaviors once they get on that college campus. The second reason you want to do this is because these are the teachers who are writing their letters of recommendation. So when students are applying to college, I like my students to have 2 academic recommenders from junior year. So that's going to be math, history, English, science, or world language if they're still taking language classes. So those 5 categories, I like to have 2. And sometimes students will tell me, well, I have a great relationship with my chemistry teacher from sophomore year. That's fine. And in a pinch, we could use that person if we need to. But what colleges are looking for in these recommendations is the most recent possible information about who your student is in the classroom. And so if your student is applying to college as a senior, who they were as a sophomore is probably, a pretty different person. Think about how much they grow from, 14 to 16 or 15 to 17. It's like they're really different. So that's why we really want to aim for those junior year teachers if possible. And so building that rapport with those teachers now is going to help those teachers have something, not only be willing to talk about your student and say yes when your student asks for the rec, but to have something to talk about of value and to really be able to share about the student's character. I don't want your student to get a super generic letter of recommendation that says, so-and-so is a great student. They show up on time. They cause no problems in class. They get their homework done. Like all of a recap of their activity list. I see that a lot. I used to see that all the time when I worked in admissions. And that's not bad. That's not going to hurt anybody, but it's not going to help, right? Because I didn't learn anything new about your student if that's the kind of letter of recommendation I'm reading. I already knew all of that. I saw the transcript. I saw the activity list. What I really want is for the teacher to be able to say, let me tell you a story about this student, and then explain and tell a story about an aspect of their character or who they are in the classroom and how they show up so that I can picture what they'll be like on our campus. That's always what I was looking for in admissions, right? And so that's what I'm coaching my students to try to build these relationships to get letters like that when it comes time to ask for these letters of rec. They'll also have an opportunity to ask an other recommender. So on the common application, there's the teacher recommender category, and then there's the other recommender category. It's 2 different categories. And so I like 2 teacher recs, and then other recommenders, it varies. It could be an advisor, an arts teacher, a coach, a boss, a mentor. So that's just anybody else, who can really speak about your student and who they are and their character and, what they bring to the group that person, interacts with them in. So building those relationships is really going to help your student gain fodder for those strong letters of recommendation. So, the bottom line is focusing on the big three is going to give you and your student a place to focus and a place to land in the sea of stress that can sometimes come with junior year as you're getting ready to go into this college application time. But it doesn't just give you a place to sit and land like in a rocking chair, right? Where you're moving, but you're not really going anywhere. This actually gives you a place to focus and land and reduce that stress, but it's also helping you lay out steps and move towards something that's going to give you really great information to use once you get to that critical application time starting at the end of junior year. So I'm going to open it up for questions and answers. So I saw a bunch of you were able to put into the chat where you're tuning in from. Mostly juniors. I got a sophomore. Awesome, Roxanne. You're here early. Good planning. Good time to be here, Roxanne. I also did a Facebook Live not last week, not the last one, 2 ago. So probably about a month ago about college or high school planning, 9th, 10th, 11th grade, like the key milestones that you should be setting. So definitely recommend going back and watching that if you haven't already. But yeah, so definitely put any questions in that you have about you or your students or anything that you're wondering about junior year. I'm happy to answer those. In the meantime, I'll let you know that I'm going to be back on October 20th, and I'm going to be joined by 2 of my colleagues, which I'm really excited about. So I'll be joined by Ariel and Jordan, and mostly I will be asking questions, but they will be talking about athletic recruitment and how that really ties into the college admissions process and, different things that students can be doing at the high school level if they're thinking that they do want to pursue athletic recruitment in college and play college level sports. So if you have an athlete, then this will be great information for you. It'll be really helpful. So make sure that you're tuning in on the 20th for that. And yeah, I think that'll be really great. Ooh, Meg is here from south of Boston. Awesome. Meg, I moved down here from Boston. I love that area, Massachusetts. We have a fabulous office up in Maine that really does a great job serving all of our New England clients. So if you're working with them, you are in good hands. That's great. Boston this time of year is chef's kiss. Best time of year. Best time to be there. Fall. Awesome. Great. All right. Well, I hope that you all have a wonderful rest of your weekend, and I will see you back here in a couple weeks. Have a good one. Bye.